please hit that subscribe button.
Hey everybody.
Better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, the Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody, so I am super excited about this video. It is prediction time. I am going to be predicting the 8 play-in round series for the NHL when hockey does come back, who I think is going to win, and in how many games, which will be a nice little side bet almost to see if I can get that right. But this is going to be a lot of fun. A lot of hockey channels around YouTube have been doing their predictions here recently. I'm doing it a little bit differently. Most other channels are just predicting the entire playoffs from the play-in round into the playoffs and all the way through to the Stanley Cup. I am separating them. This video is just for the play-in round. And then what I will do is once the play-in round is complete and we actually know the teams that made it to the actual playoffs, when we get this down to 16 teams and the seeding and what the matchups are going to be, I will then do my full playoff predictions, all the way through to the Stanley Cup winner. But this is for the play-in round. So this is kind of the play-in predictions, and then after the play-ins are done, we'll have the full playoff predictions, but that's not going to be until probably another couple months, until after once the playoffs are ready to fully start. So this is I'm excited for this. This is going to be a good time, guys. We'll see which ones you agree with, which ones you don't. Please remember, these are just my predictions, and I'm usually really bad at predicting, so don't get mad if I don't pick your team to win. Make your own video with your own predictions if you don't like mine. It's just an opinion. It's not the be-all, end-all, and I'm probably going to be wrong about a lot of it, but it's always fun to do predictions. It's always fun to look at, and I like trying to not only guess the winners, but guess the number of games as well. That kind of makes it even more interesting to see, can I get the team right? Okay, that's one thing, but can you guess the number of games? Which is much, much harder. And again, this play-in round is only best of 5, so it's makes that a little bit easier because it's either ending in 3, 4, or 5, so you kind of have a 1/3 shot at it, but it's still fun to look at. But with that, I'm ready to get started. Please hit that subscribe button if you're new. Give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already. That helps a ton and is greatly appreciated. But let's start in the Eastern Conference, where we have the 5 versus 12 matchup of Pittsburgh versus Montreal. And I am taking the Pittsburgh Penguins in 4 games. This series has created a ton of buzz and a lot of talk about the possibility of Montreal knocking off Pittsburgh. Guys, I know everyone mentions Carey Price. And yes, can Carey Price steal a playoff series? Yes. But this is not 2014 Carey Price anymore. This is 2020 Carey Price. He's not the same goaltender. He's still very, very good. Don't get me wrong. But he's not the same goaltender. And when I look at Pittsburgh, they still have Sidney Crosby. They still have Evgeny Malkin. They still have Chris Letang. They're getting Jake Gensel back. They still have Patrick Hornquist. They added Jason Zucker at the deadline. There's so much talent on that Pittsburgh team. I really just don't see the Penguins blowing this. I've got Pittsburgh in 4. Next up, the 6 versus 11 matchup is the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Rangers. Obviously, New York is such a trendy pick right now, such a lightning-fast, super talented young team. Doesn't have a lot of experience, but look like they're just on the cusp of breaking out into being a superstar team in the East. Carolina, very, very good, underrated young team themselves, who were literally in the Eastern Conference Final last year. People seem to forget that about Carolina. They were a conference finalist last year. No, they didn't win and go to the finals, but they were one of the last 4 teams left last year. This is a very good Carolina team. I'm going with the trend, however. I'm taking the New York Rangers. This Rangers team I love. I don't think they're ready to go deep into the playoffs yet. I think they need more experience before that, and to get a little older, grow up a little bit, and get that, get more games together under their belt before they're ready to make a deep run. But can they win a play-in round to just get into the playoffs? Oh, hell yeah, they can. Give me the New York Rangers in 5. I'm going with the trend on that one. Next, we have the 7-10 matchup, which is the New York Islanders versus Florida Panthers. This is going to be an interesting series. We have such a contrast of styles here where you have the very structured defense-first New York Islanders under Barry Trotz versus a very high-flying, high-scoring offensive team in Florida who really don't do much of anything defensively and have gotten extremely disappointing goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky, their $10 million man. He's had an awful season this year. I don't trust Bobrovsky. I don't trust Florida's defense. I think when it comes to playoffs, it's even though this first play-in round is technically a play-in round and not technically the playoffs, it's going to be playoff level intensity. It's going to be playoff style hockey. Florida's not going to win a playoff style hockey series. I just don't see it happening. They don't have the defense. They're too high flying. They're too bad in their own zone. Give me the New York Islanders in 5 games. I do think Florida can score enough to push this to 5 games, but in the end, I think the Islanders get it done. And that leaves the 8 versus 9 matchup, Toronto versus Columbus. This is another series where there has been a ton of talk about an upset, a ton of talk about Columbus knocking off Toronto the way that they knocked off Tampa Bay in the first round last year. I am taking the Toronto Maple Leafs in 4 games. This is not the Columbus Blue Jackets team from last year. Now, they lost Bobrovsky, but Merzlikins and Korpisalo have been just as good, if not better than Bobrovsky. Their goaltending situation is fine. What really, really has hurt Columbus is they have lost offense. They have lost Artemi Panarin. They have lost Matt Duchene. Cam Atkinson had a much less productive year this year than he did last season. This is not the same Columbus team star power-wise, talent-wise, as they had last year. They lost a lot offensively. Gustav Nyquist had a nice season. He actually played pretty well for the Blue Jackets. He produced nicely. He's not an Artemi Panarin. He's not a Matt Duchene. I don't see it happening. I don't think this Columbus team can score enough to outscore Toronto. As big of an issue as Toronto's defense is, I think they get by the Blue Jackets. Give me Toronto in 4. I'm not going to say anything about Toronto going further beyond this, but give me Toronto getting into the playoffs at least in 4 in this one. Moving on to the Western Conference now, we have the 5 versus 12 matchup of Edmonton versus Chicago. Again, this is one that people have been kind of bringing up as a possible upset. I'm taking the Edmonton Oilers all day. I almost picked a sweep. I'll give Chicago a game. Chicago still has Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. Alex DeBrincat's a really good goal scorer. Dominic Kubalik had a huge year. Kirby Dach, great young player. There's things to like about Chicago, but give me Edmonton in 4 and with Draisaitl and McDavid. And Mike Smith had a really good year for the Oilers this year. Corey Crawford for Chicago is a shell of his former self in goal. Chicago's defense is just mediocre at best. I don't want to say it's an abomination, but it's not a good defense core. I think Edmonton offensively, led by McDavid and Draisaitl, will eat Chicago's defense alive, and they should easily win that series. The 6 versus an 11 matchup is the Nashville Predators versus Arizona Coyotes. I think this one is going to be close. This is going to be a very low-scoring series. We know how Arizona plays. They got a healthy Darcy Kemper back. You've got Nashville, who's a very talented team on paper, but greatly underachieved all season long. You've got Arizona, who greatly struggles offensively. However, is a shutdown defensive team, one of the best defensive teams in the league. I'm taking the Nashville Predators in 5 games. I think this one is going to go all the way, go the distance, but Nashville with a little bit more talent and a little bit more experience, given Nashville's usually a perennial playoff team, whereas Arizona hasn't made the playoffs since 2012. That little edge in experience and talent is going to give Nashville that little bit of an edge, and they pull it out, maybe even an overtime of Game 5, but Nashville gets it done to move on. We have Vancouver versus Minnesota as the 7 and 10 matchup. And this one, Vancouver could have won the Pacific Division this year. Then they started having injury problems. Brock Besser got hurt, Jacob Markstrom got hurt, and Vancouver really slid in the standings. Vancouver, who will be pretty much mostly healthy when we do return, have Besser back, have Markstrom back, who's playing the best hockey of his career. Is a very, very good team. Minnesota, I've never been high on Minnesota. Minnesota ended up finishing better this season than I thought they were going to at the beginning of the year. I just think they're a very mediocre team. They've got some really good players, but then they've got some other players who are really just along for the ride. And, especially offensively, I think they're too reliant on a select few players to put up points, and everyone else kind of doesn't do a whole lot. And that's going to end up hurting them in the end. I think with Vancouver's talent and being healthy again, Vancouver in 4 in that one. And finally, the last series, the 8 versus 9 matchup, Calgary versus Winnipeg. What a series this is going to be. I am super excited to watch this one, guys. This is going to be huge. If any series goes 5, it's going to be this one. I can almost guarantee that this series is going to go the full 5 games. You've got Winnipeg, very, very talented up front, a Vezina-level goaltender in goal in Connor Hellebuck, who can play at an unreal, godlike level at times and easily could steal a series. And then you have Calgary, who, is a very good team across the board, but never seems to be able to win those big games when it matters most and has not done anything in the playoffs recently. They're always an early out in the playoffs, and because of that, I really think Calgary has a lot to prove this year. This is a team that consistently just, gets out in the first round. Oh, everyone talks about, teams that choke. Like in the East, Washington, until they won the Cup in 2018, always had that choker label. Tampa Bay now, after last year, has taken that choker label. People don't talk about Calgary as chokers, but look at their playoff record. They do not go deep in the playoffs. Even when they have really good teams, they don't go deep in the playoffs. And last year was the epitome of that, where you don't see Calgary as a number 1 seed very often. They were the best team in the Pacific Division last year, and they not only lost in the first round to a wild card Colorado team, they kind of lost in embarrassing fashion to Colorado. They got worked in that series. So Calgary, kind of the chokers of the West, and they have a lot to prove this year, and I think they know that. They know, especially this good row, Monahan, Giordano, Brody, this core group that's been together for a while now with the Flames, that really haven't been able to go deep into the playoffs. They are going to be playing with a certain level of desperation, a certain level of angst in their game, knowing that they need to, do something this year, because it has not been pretty in the postseason for them. I'm taking Calgary in 5 in this one. Listen, Connor Hellebuck, if he plays at the best that he can, absolutely could steal this series for Winnipeg. I'm not saying Winnipeg cannot win this series. I am taking Calgary in 5 because they need to win. They need to win this series. They need to do something this year. Make some noise in the postseason. Can't make noise in the postseason if you don't even technically make the postseason. And losing a play-in round would be another addition to the choker label for the Calgary Flames. So I'm taking Calgary out of desperation in that one. They have to win this series. So there you have it, guys. Those are my predictions for the play-in round, the 8 play-in round series for the NHL this year in 2020 when it returns. Like I said, once we know the playoff matchups, once we get through the play-in round and we get to the actual playoffs, I will be doing the rest of my full playoff predictions. But just for the play-in rounds, that's who I think is going to win. So, yeah, we'll see how it turns out. Again, if you follow this channel, you know my predictions. Very hit or miss, to say the least. And my playoff predictions are usually even worse than my regular season predictions. So, again, anything can happen. It's just my opinion. But those are the teams that I'm taking, and I cannot wait for hockey to be back. I cannot wait to watch these series take place. And I can't wait to see who wins. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, links to my Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.